I shared some data and some research with you around leadership. I know you spend a lot of time
Yeah.
on leadership, leading others, helping people lead people, leading
Hmm.
your company to new heights. And there were a couple of things that I wanted to pull out from the data and get your reactions to.
Sure.
Off the cuff, you can even use like one word to describe how you feel about this data point. You ready for it?
Sure.
So if we look at this data across time, so in February, we asked a number of workers how much they feel that their manager cares about them as a person. And in February, that data was 70% of workers agreed that their manager cares about them as a person. We then ran that same data again month over month. And this past September, only 65% of workers agree. So we're on a downward
Mhm.
trajectory in terms of people feeling cared about as a person. So that means about a third of workers today don't feel like their leader, the person who they come to work for, cares about them.
Yeah.
One word reaction. How do you feel about that?
Well, my reaction to that is that in today's environment, right, particularly the macro environment that we operate in, there are so many factors that are occurring that send signals to employees.
Mm,
And those factors, for example, what's going on in the macro economy relative to AI, as well as other factors that are impacting kind of the workforce. Workers are feeling that they're not cared for, and that employers are really focused on really just the bottom line and not about them. And so, when companies say employees are their most important resource, they're really not seeing it translate
mm,
into the actions that a lot of companies are taking relative to downsizing the workforce, or cutting back and scaling back on benefits and other support that they provide. So I think they're reading what they're seeing coming through and translate from their employers, as well as again what's happening in the macro environment. And what's happened, particularly in the U.S., what's happening in the macro environment impacts companies,
yeah.
because companies are very much intertwined with a lot of federal support
Mm,
within the U.S. I'm not sure what happens, internationally and how that plays, but I would suspect it's similar. But I think that's playing out. There's a lot of scaling back going on in the U.S. right now. Education, for example,
mm,
Department of Education is being impacted. Well, for us here at Crayola, where we believe in creativity, a big part of our ecosystem is teachers,
mm.
teachers and kids. And when teachers are seeing resources cut, certainly that impacts kind of how our business and how we think about our business and how we support teachers and parents and kids.
Yeah. Say, I'm a huge fan of Crayola. I just pulled over and now I can't find a different one, but we have Crayola colored pencils all over the house. Um,
Hmm.
I'm a child of artists. Both my parents are artists, trained artists. And so this idea of creativity being part of the company ethos and then
Yes.
helping the world unlock creativity through your products and the way in which you see the world. How much does that play into how managers lead people at Crayola?
Well, I think that plays into our environment strongly. One of the things we like to say is that we're continual learners, and so we have a very strong, robust L&D offering that we offer to our employees. And so, for example, I'll give you a couple examples of some of the things that we do. So we have a training that we do for every new hire coming into our business, as well as current employees, called Leading for Results. And with that training, we try to catch managers within 90 days, or all employees, not just managers, all employees coming into Crayola, where we provide them with some foundation about our culture in terms of who we are and what we're all about and what our mission is. Then we provide, of course, our cultural behaviors and what those are and how we work and support each other, through collaboration and transparency. Um, and then we also provide training that supports the company's strategy, how that's cascades down to the organization, and then also around thought leadership and people leadership, such that managers understand that these themes that we are talking about really goes through all of what they do day to day. In our company, we have 4 leadership competencies that applies to the person on the production floor all the way to the C-suite. And those 4 competencies are certainly our cultural competency, results competency, people leadership competency, and then thought leadership competency. And so those are the 4 competencies that we have throughout the company, and we train everybody on that. And like I said, we train all new hires coming into the company on those competencies. In addition, we have what we call a manager boot camp. So whenever somebody becomes a manager, we take them through certain training around a general manager mindset. So what that basically means is, how do they manage their part of the business as its own kind of business unit? So they really understand kind of the financial implications and all of the other implications that goes into leading a business. Employee relations, comp and benefits, so that they kind of get the full picture, so that they have all the tools necessary to go lead and have the right conversations with their employees. So training and development is something that we do continually. Certainly, there are certain things that you have to do, right? Compliance training, whether it be privacy data or harassment training and so on. Those are standard, but we really focus on a lot of other things around building leadership. So situational leadership, DISC training, conflict resolution, you name it, we're doing those things, as well as what we like to call, thought leadership training. So Lean Six Sigma is also a part of what we do and train within our company, and it's integrated into our Leading for Results training. So really making sure training and development is integral in what we do kind of communicates to our employees the fact that creativity and problem solving are essential items for leading and being successful within Crayola.
I'm reflecting on something you said earlier and drawing a connection between the two, which is you focus so much in your business on educators because you know that they're a primary focus from a customer centricity perspective, but you're also educators of your own workforce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important that we model and we live our mission. And so we really try to do that. And that's where, I have talked about before, growth mindset. This is where that kind of comes in to, a fixed mindset says, hey, I am born as I am, and no matter what I do, I can't change. Yeah. Well, a growth mindset says, hey, you know what? With the right work and practice and effort, I can do and acquire new skills. Yeah. And so we believe in a test and learn, mindset. We believe that if you invest in continuing to learn, then we can get to where we need to get to as a company, and that you can't be self-limiting by thinking that, hey, you know what, this is it, I'm just who I am. No, you can get better. And we believe in investing in oneself to get better.
Well, it's funny because I think that lives through your products, right? It's like try again and iterate and spark creativity. And there's a level of iteration and learning and continuous growth that comes with the artistic process.
Absolutely. In fact, we believe the artistic process is messy and, it's not perfect, but it is with that practice and with that effort that you gain the self-satisfaction and you build skills necessary to be creative. And so, we totally believe in that. In fact, while our products are really focused on kids, heavily on kids, we also believe creativity, is for all ages. Whether you are 5 or 55, there's lots of research, Simone, and someone who does a lot of surveys and research yourself, you probably have come across this, but the most sought after skill by most employers is not so much the degree, but it's creativity.
Yes.
Right, and problem solving.
It's a sad research point that we just learned about in our AI report, that newer generations entering the workforce are turning to AI as a source of creativity and problem solving, which maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a not good thing. But this idea of the creativity lives within you and you've got an opportunity to unleash it. We're finding sources for creativity. How do you feel about that?
I think it's about how you approach it and how you apply it. And so we, as an organization, are thinking about it as additive. So in other words, how do we leverage it to get more organized, to get better at compiling data, but certainly not to replace the human creativity. So we want to leverage what it can bring, because if it can free up capacity for our people to be more creative, then we're all for that. We don't want to replace the authentic creativity that comes from within our folks. And so our employees have certainly brought that to our attention, and we've told them, hey, we want to leverage what it can do to enhance what they do, not replace what they do.
Yes, I love that. Okay, I have a different question for you, pivoting for a
Sure.
second. Is leadership an art or a science?
It's an art. I don't think it's a science at all. I think it's an art, because what I would say, and I think my own self, in terms of how I have come through the years as a leader, right? And you learn and develop things over time. I also, I learn from others, right? There are others that I see as I was growing up and coming up and finding my own kind of leadership style, that I might say, wow, I really like how that person did this and how they did that. But I have to be authentically me. I can't be them, but I certainly can learn from and apply certain things that I've seen along the way. And so I would say, yeah, it's an art. You kind of polish that as you go, and you adjust this as you go, and you kind of continue to evolve. I don't think you're ever there. You continue to evolve. And I think of myself as a work in progress, and I've never reached perfection. I'm striving for it. And I hope to get better every day, and certainly believe that you can learn and continue to improve on your leadership skills. And there's certain things that, especially when things are, I think adversity reveals character.
Mm.
And so when things get really tough, that's when you really know where the true leadership comes from within someone. Can they remain calm? Can they be empathetic? Can they show genuine concern? Those are things that come from a true leader, right? A true leader really appreciates people, gets the most out of people, invests in people, is authentic, and shows concern and care for others. And by the way, they must model what they preach.
Mm.
Right? So you can't be preaching one thing and doing another. You have to model what you're preaching.
Yes, there's consistency in it, but there's also a lot of humanity in the way that you just described those character traits. I think a lot of times in our work, we see people put leadership training into a box and say, okay, first you have to learn feedback, and you need those things. You described it at Crayola too, right? A course that teaches you how do you give a performance review and how do you have that conversation. But the elements that are sometimes unspoken, and maybe more what we're seeing in the 70% of people who say their manager cares, now down to 65, is that care, that empathy, that concern. You can give me feedback in a clinical way, which is the science of it, but the art is recognizing the humanity. And I think that's a really special way to think about it. Okay, let's
Absolutely. Simona, let me mention one thing for you on that point. Typically when I sit down with folks, and I have my folks tell me that that I'm brutally honest at times. People that work for me, they say you're brutally honest, and you kind of hit me right between the eyes. But I do love and care, right? And I tell my folks, I said, look, I'm going to provide some feedback to you, and this is because I care about you. I care about your growth. I care about your development. And if I don't share with you kind of where your blind spots are or where you need to grow, then I'm not being a true advocate, right? And so I think when leaders make it clinical and sterile, then that's when people walk away feeling like, geez, what happened? But when you talk about, hey, I care about you, I really want to see you grow and develop, I'm here to support you, that feedback is taken in a whole different context.
Yes, yes. I, as someone who's received tough feedback over the course of my own career, the leaders that I've loved the most are the ones who do exactly that. They deliver really hard messages with love and care.
Yes.
And you do listen differently. It's like kids. We just talked about our own kids, right? If my kids believe that I love them, without any avail, there's no limitations to my level of love, then I've earned the right to be honest with them. And I think that's the parenting skill and the leadership skill. We find a lot of similarities in those two buckets.
Yeah.
Who's someone who believed in you, Orville? If you think of a leader who helped
Yeah.
you reach your own potential.
You know, I've been really fortunate in my career. And I tell people all the time, especially young people that I coach, I say, there's a couple things you need um, as you grow. You need a mentor, but most importantly, you need a sponsor. And sponsors are the most important things you can get because those are the folks who open doors for you. And I was fortunate in my career to have a lot of sponsors. Now I have some folks who really stand out, but I've had a lot of sponsors. So when I give you a little bit of my background and my history, I have a business degree. HR is not what I grew up in terms of college, right? I went to school for business and I was working on the line for 5 years and managing people. And I had a senior leader come to me because we did succession planning at our company. We've always done it, which is one of the wonderful things that I think we do. And the leader came to me after being with Hallmark for 5 years. And you know, he said, "Hey, we'd like you to go to Human Resources. We think it's a great development opportunity for you. We think a 1 year assignment would be wonderful." And believe it or not, at the time I said no, I didn't want to go because back at the time when that was asked, which was back in the 80s, HR was more administrative and wasn't a strategic partner.
Yeah.
So I was like, why would I want to go do that? And so I said no. Well, succession happened the next year again, and he came back and he said, "Hey, we really think you should go do this." And you know, my professor from college was bringing in my head when he came back because he told us the class, not just me, the whole class, in an OD class once when I was in college, and he said, "Look, if you're asked to do an assignment once, you can tell him no one time, but never tell him no twice, because if you do, they'll think you're not interested in growth, and they'll never come back to you." And so I decided to say yes. But with that yes, I said, I have an ask, and my ask is I'd like to go do a Dale Carnegie public speaking course because I know in HR you have to do a lot of training. So they said yes, we'll do that. And what the company did was they showed me where they were, which was they allowed me to go on company time for 12 weeks, 4 hours a night, because I was working second shift at the time, and do this course. So that investment in me told me, okay, they're serious about what they're talking about. But to make a long story short, that's the first time it kind of sparked to me that, wow, you need people in your corner. Fast forward to maybe 7 years from that conversation, I was still in HR for a 1 year assignment. I fell in love with
A little
HR.
longer than a year.
I fell in love with HR, and they never asked me to come out, and I kept my head down and kept moving. But 7 years later, I went to them and I said, "Hey, I'm ready for more. I need to do more." And I was in a distribution center. It was very flat, right? And all the leaders were young, and they said, "Would you want to go to corporate?" And I said, "You know what? Let me talk to my wife and see." So we talked. Took me about 6 months to get my wife's head around it. I ended up moving to Kansas City from Connecticut, and the leader who hired me into her department was an HR manager, and she was the first time that I realized you really need someone in your corner and somebody who really believed in you. And after working with her for a very short time, maybe 6 months, a year, she started to say to me, "Hey, look, I think I'm going to work for you one day," is what she said to me. And I mean, I'm young. I'm like, what the heck? But anyway, the real story here, Simone,
Wait a second. What did she see in you that at the time you didn't see in
you
yourself?
know, she just thought that I had really good business chops. You know, she said, you're a smart thinker. You got great people skills. You can give a tough conversation to people and they can walk away feeling like you just pat them on the back. And that's one of the things she always said to me. She said, "Wow, you can have the toughest conversation with people and they walk out of the office smiling." And I said, "Yeah, I said, well, I try to make sure people never feel attacked, right? And that it's not about them. I'm talking about the process, right? Because you can change behaviors, right? But sometimes you need people to help you see that, right? So I always believe in that. Protect the person, right? In your conversations. Don't attack them. And
You know what we call that right deals? We call that high performance and high humanity. Is you can hold people accountable to high performance and do it with a lot of humanity. That's what it sounds like she's telling you.
Absolutely. So, that's how I always led, and that's how I believe in treating people the way I like to be treated, and that's how I respond well when I have leaders that treat me that way. But what she did for me, that leader did for me, was she gave me the playbook. She said, "Look, for you to grow, here's what you need. This, and she laid out the blocks laid out the blocks for me. You need all these work blocks. And she not only did she lay it out, she engineered it. So 2 years under her, I then jumped from her role into compensation because she said, you need to go get all these HR blocks under you before you get to the top of HR, because you have to have the foundation. So I went to compensation. I went there for another 2 years. Then I left compensation. I went to a diversity role. I left the diversity role. And then when I got there, the next thing for me was, you need to go manage a department and lead people. So I then went to the distribution center that I used to manage, but the sister one in Missouri, leading that HR department with a team of 5 people, a budget of 7 million. And then from there, I then started managing across the network. So the distribution center that I came from in Enfield, Connecticut was now under my leadership as an HR leader. And then I picked up transportation, and then I picked up fixtures and so on and so forth. And then fast forward from that, I then had another leader who I was working under who said, hey, you need to get a front of the business experience. So in other words, I spent all my time in distribution and logistics. They said, you need to go on the front end of the business. So I then moved from there, and I went and they put me in a startup business where this startup business was a home and gift business. And this home and gift business allowed me to work on the front end where the creative artists were and the designers were coming up with concepts. And we were managing it in a 100-person small startup home and gift business. So I was seeing the business from the start all the way to the shelf. And that's when Crayola opened up after that assignment, because now I had the full, if you would, experience to lead a division. So it's having those folks behind you that believed in you, that created opportunities, that says, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? And that's kind of how things happen. So I truly believe without sponsors, it's really hard to navigate, because you need people to talk about you when you're not in the room.
Yes.
And open doors for you.
Yes. Well, and it sounds like what she also did was help you see a path that you otherwise might not have seen.
Absolutely.
And the language of engineering, I think a lot of leaders, especially today in organizations that are feeling constrained by resources, or we don't have the budget, or we can't give you more headcount, they feel constrained by what's not available.
Mm-hmm.
What is available is learning opportunities.
Yes.
And we've worked with clients who do something called a bungee project. You slingshot somebody out for a couple of weeks and you bring them back. We can all do without a person for a couple of weeks if we think that's the potential. But we often feel constrained by what's possible.
Yeah. And the other thing I tell people, because I also did this myself, is all your moves does not have to be up, as long as you're growing. So when I left Connecticut, I moved for a lateral move. And most people wouldn't do that. I moved for a lateral move because I know that was not my end spot, right? I know it was a stepping stone. And then when I left distribution to go to the small business that they had, startup business that they asked me to go to, I actually left a director's role, went back to a manager role. So I left the HR director role to go to HR manager role again, because I know it was not my standing spot. This was just a stepping stone, right? And so I tell people all the time, you must be focused on learning, building your portfolio, right? You have to think about it as, hey, you're building your portfolio. The more you learn, the more valuable you are to yourself and to the organization.
One of the things that you might have seen in our research report on Everyday Leader is the level of confidence that people have in their own abilities to be leaders. And we talk about it as this leadership delta. We have a CEO that we talked to the other day who called it the bullshit gap, because there's a difference between how confident a leader is and how effective their workers see them to be.
Yes.
And as you were going from job to job, I imagine levels of confidence were varying.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you navigate that? And what advice do you offer others?
Yeah, my advice is going with and acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm here to learn from you. You're going to teach me some things, and hey, I'll share some things with you, and I think together we'll make a better team. But if you're vulnerable with others to say, I don't know everything, and it's okay to be humble, I think that's how you learn. And you have to be a sponge and learn from others. The person on the shop floor can teach me a whole lot about what they do every day. I can't learn it from my office. So if you're humble, I think you learn. And that's what I've done in everything that I've moved into, is learning from others, because you have to have a learning mindset. If you don't have a learning mindset that says, I'm going to go into this to learn and then master this, and then, and I don't have to be the master. I need to just be competent,
Yeah.
right? Because competence is important. You can't get you can't BS your way through life, right? You
No.
have to gain competence, and you do that by being vulnerable, asking questions, and just being a sponge. And that's what I say you have to do. You have to be a sponge, to learn the things that you don't know, and to have a growth mindset. Because if you have a growth mindset, it says, you know what, I may not know this today, but with the right effort and practice, I'm going to know how to do this.
Yes. Well, and I think in our research, what we're seeing is that employees can sense, right? That frontline person, the person on the factory floor, knows when you're BSing.
Absolutely.
Just feel like, oh, because I have the hat, because I wear the title, because I've got the
Yes.
position, I have to be the one who knows. And so there's level of confidence that's being projected, when in fact workers are very quickly figuring out you don't know what you're doing. And so that level of vulnerability actually breeds trust,
Absolutely.
a willingness to teach and engage,
Yes.
versus this kind of fake battle of playing
Yes.
chicken, of who kind of finds out who first.
Yes.
The other thought that I was having as you were describing it is, we also in our research looked at people who are not currently formally leading others,
Yes.
and the level of confidence they have in their ability to
Yeah.
lead. And they
Yeah.
are extremely confident as well.
Yes.
But then we asked the question, how much do you want to take responsibility for other people's performance? And the answer was no. And so we thought that was very interesting, that people who feel they're confident to lead others actually
Mhm.
don't want to take responsibility for the performance and
Yeah.
productivity and success of others. And if I hear your story, you were just going from thing to thing, job to job, opportunity to opportunity,
Yeah.
recognizing that you needed to build the credibility and the
Yeah.
competence to then be able to have responsibility for others in a way where you actually knew what you were doing.
Yes.
What do you see currently in your workforce or in the workforce in general on that? People who are non-leaders, who may
Yeah.
or may not have the confidence and credibility to step into the leadership role.
So what we teach in our organization is that everybody can be a leader. You can be a leader from a process. You can be a leader of people. You can be a leader of a project. So we teach leadership from a perspective of, if you want to lead, step up and lead. And so we truly believe that it's not a title. It's really, as you call it, an identity. It's an identity. And the thing I'd say to you is this: even if you have the will to lead or the capability to lead, there's still things that you must learn and things that you must understand. And so, having this mindset in our people about every Crayola, we call our folks Crayoleans. All Crayoleans are leaders. I know it sounds like an alien, right?
I
All
really enjoyed it.
all Crayoleans are leaders. We also support that with the training that I talk about, right? So for example, even in our production floor, we have what we call a manager in training program. And this manager in training program, and I'll grab some things here that we do for folks on our floor. We put it out there to say, if someone wants to be a leader, do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a supervisor? Do you want to be a leader of people? And we have a curriculum that we develop, which we partner with a local community college and do a certificate in management development program, right? Where they go through and they, gain skills around managing and leading people, developing strategic plans, performance reviews, all of that, right? But we also do some internal things such as positive employee relations training, provide them with some Microsoft Suite training, teach them how to use our HRA systems, documentations around performance and policies and all of that, safety, continuous improvement, lean training, and just first level maintenance work, right? So while we promote that stuff, we also back it up with the needed support for them to be successful, right? Because you can have the will, but you must have the skill, right?
Yes.
And so we back it up with, hey, we're here to support you and develop you if you want to be. and step into that role. But if you don't want to be, you can lead from where you are.
Yes.
You don't have to lead to be a formal manager. You can lead from a team, a focus group, whatever it might be. We push that within the organization.
We talk a lot about that as quiet leadership. There are these people in your organization who are quietly leading processes. They may not be loud and bold with the title
Right.
and the grade, but everyone has an opportunity to lead or contribute in some way. Allison on our team, who you know well, does a lot of thinking around leadership identity. And so we spend a lot of time talking about leadership identity. And
Yeah.
we often reflect, like if you pull a group of, my child is in third grade. If I go into his third grade classroom, and I don't even need to bribe them with Crayola products, I think they would answer this question without any. I would say, how many of you all think of yourselves as leaders? I think every single one of them raise their hands.
Mhm.
But if we fast forward and go into a conference room with a bunch of analysts at a hedge
Yeah.
fund, and we say, how many of you think of yourselves as a leader? Those hands don't shoot up.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder what happens between
Yeah.
third grade and when
Mhm.
you enter the workforce, where somebody defines to you what a leader is and isn't.
Yeah.
How do you think the definition of leadership needs to change, given your own experiences and as a leader yourself?
Yeah. That's $1 million question, Simona. $1 million question. I may even say $10 million.
I love
Um, but when you think about society we live in today, right? And from third grade up, the norms that are put on people, right? We put people in boxes, and we impose upon them what leadership should be, and we put it into a title. Every team has a captain, and you know what I mean? And you go on and on and on, right?
Yes,
So we've instilled that into people
yes,
so that once they get to high school and college and so on, we've now been impacted by what society has said leadership is.
yes,
And so we have to unlearn, people have to unlearn that. And I think that's where hopefully universities will come in, and even high school should start to think about this, about
yes,
really, if you were taking away those norms that have been put on kids, because as they start to get involved in organized sports, it starts to show up
yes,
where we start to put them in these boxes around, okay, you're the line leader, or you're right, and leader, and some kids just kind of, and the brightest kid in the class, now you do, right? It's how we put norms on people, and I think it's unfortunate,
yes.
but we have to unlearn that. We really do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have big visions for that, so we can talk about that in a different conversation and how we need to tap into that potential in kids and carry
Yes.
that through. Because I do think somewhere along the way, the system shuts
Yes.
it down. And there's a systemic element of this too, right? In our research
Mhm.
on Everyday Leader, we found one particular demographic group expressing interest in leadership more than any
Yes.
other. Do you remember that from
Yeah.
our research report?
I,
It was
I saw it in your report.
it was Black workers. Black workers
Yeah.
currently in the US workforce are raising their hands saying, I'm ready to be leading others
Mhm.
forward and want
Yeah.
to take on leadership responsibility. And it makes me wonder what's prompting people to not put certain people in positions of power.
Mhm.
What might hold someone back from raising their hand formally? And
Yeah.
how do we, as leaders in organizations who are trying to build productive employee bases to be able to deliver great experiences to our customers, great services, how are we not tapping into this
Yeah.
unlocked potential?
Yeah. It's that's a tough one. I don't know why organizations aren't doing that. I personally feel that at our organizations we create a playing field where we make that available to all, and we open that up, and we are very open about, hey, everyone, if you're interested, just raise your hand, and we'll get you involved. I'm not sure why other organizations aren't tapping into that, but that struck me in your research,
Yeah.
that stood out amongst others. But it's a good data point, and hopefully, as others see your report, they'll hopefully create more opportunities for folks to get into leadership.
Yeah, yeah. And we saw some gender differences in there too. So I think this idea of a
Mhm.
holistic thing, if you will, of what leadership looks like maybe creates a more inclusive opinion on the types of people who can do those roles. And God knows we need more great leaders other
For sure.
on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
All right, just to wrap, because we stole so much of your
Yeah.
time. There are a lot of people leaders, business leaders, and you're both, who are battling some of the challenges that we're facing every day with everyday
Mhm.
that are looking up to them, that are asking them, how do I navigate this uncertainty? What advice would you offer to people who are in a position like yours with oversight of
Mhm.
culture, of results, of
Yeah.
leadership in this moment? What's one
Yeah.
thing?
I believe that, individuals that are in leadership position or in roles such as mine need to invest in people within the organization. And that means you must have a process that constantly reinforces, learning and development, creating, individual development plans for people, because everybody have different needs. And so it can't be one size fits all, right? And so one of the things we do, for example, within my organization is we, through our annual talent management process, we're talking about everybody in the organization at various levels, right? So it builds from the lower level all the way up to the C-suite. And one of the things we want to make sure is, hey, what are the development needs of each person, and then develop individual development plans or IDPs for those individuals to help them develop and grow, so they can realize their full potential. So I believe investing in people to build the capabilities. So you're not investing blindly. There's a couple of things here that's going on, right, Simona? One being, there's the individual development plans, but then also there's the organizational strategies and the capabilities needed to deliver, pardon me, on the vision that you have for the organization, right? And so there's a component of individual growth, but there's also a component of, are you building the capabilities necessary to deliver on what the vision of the business, right? And so you have to do those in tandem. And so sometimes it's, hey, I'm developing individual plans for this person, but I'm also developing and building organizational capability. So, for example, e-commerce. When e-commerce came and was hot in 10 years ago, one of the things I did with the, other leaders in our business was we created a small, if you would, team cohort of leaders to really build e-commerce capabilities in our business, SEO, SEM, right? So that we could then really, if you would, harness the capabilities needed for our business and then spread it across the rest of the business. Once we did that, we then disbanded that team and pushed them back into the business, right? So that they could help with everybody else's. So it's a little bit about, hey, what's the individual needs, but also what are the capabilities? Today it's AI. How do you leverage AI for the betterment of the business without negatively impacting the employee base? So that's kind of my next challenge, right? Is how we do that. So that's my advice: is invest in your people, invest in building capabilities, and lead authentically, right? Be empathetic, be transparent, and transparency is I can't say enough about it. People are adults. Be honest with them. When you tell them the truth, they may not like it, but they get it and they appreciate it, right? So those are the words I'd offer.
Yeah, it builds trust. When you describe this two-prong approach of help build the individual, but also build the path to sort of line of sight, it reminds me of the leader you described.
Great.
She saw you and what you needed, and she also knew exactly what you needed, and she engineered this path. And I think when you think about this at scale, particularly in a role like yours, which you have to do, it's one thing, but as an everyday leader, sometimes it's just about holding those two things at the same time and saying, what does this person need and what does the context need? And you have a beautiful example of someone who did that for you early in your career, and how you've now translated that to doing it to an enterprise is truly inspiring.
Thank you. And I try to play it forward. And I probably have a list, and I kid you not, of at least 30 people that I mentor and coach throughout the year. Because for me, it's, someone did it for me. I need to do it.
Yeah, so, I could not agree more. I take a lot of pride in doing this. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me before we drop?
Well, I hope I enjoyed the conversation, and I hope this met the objective of what you were looking for, and glad I could have been a part of it.
Oh, well, it was wonderful to have you part of it. There were no objectives other than having a great conversation with a great person about a really interesting topic that we all spent a lot of time thinking about. So thank you.